Ladies and not ladies of KanDDDinsky, welcome. We are going to talk now about the joy of hermeneutics, about hermeneutical violence. And let's do this. Let's do this together. So I'm talking about philosophy applied to tech all day here, and I'm using the same Scully draw all day. And you can look at the notes from a previous sessions in future sessions in this Scully draw. You can join it at this QR code. You can write on it, do your own notes if you want. You can correct my typos if you want, things like that. Everything is possible. You can also not join if you don't want. Don't worry about that. I'm not saying, not trying to force you to participate in the common drawing of the talk. Yeah? Let's go. Let's talk about hermeneutical violence. Who here has heard about hermeneutics as a word, right? Okay, so let's start from that, right? But before I ask that, have you ever had a concept change your life? Yeah? No, not yet? Okay, let's change that. Hermeneutics is something we do a lot. Like you've been doing this since you were a very, very small child. Like we always do it. That's kind of inevitable. Yeah. So let's explain hermeneutics. Hermeneutics is when you look at something and you get a new concept for your mind. So let's be more explicit about this. Have you ever heard that phrase, the map is not the territory? Yeah? Like that is a very common phrase in our field, like, the map is not the territory. Can you read this? Bigger, maybe? Yeah, map is not the territory, right? You have this phrase that goes all the time. What does it mean is that two things. One is that your models cannot be perfectly the reality because that's not doable. A map of France, the side of France, is not a useful map, right? What it also means is that you are never really interacting with some level of reality. You're always interacting with some model of reality you have in your mind, yeah? And you have to correct that model all the time, and it's never reality itself, which is sad and sucks. Like Buddhists try to correct that, but I would not recommend their approach to this. And outside of that, that's what's on the menu for human beings. Yeah? You interact with your understanding of the world and not the world itself to some extent. Is that strange to you when I say that? No? Basically, you progress towards different versions of that understanding of the world at every given moment. With new information, you perceive in a different way what you just saw just before. Like your perception of the world are changed by your understanding of the world, yes? There is a very fancy name for that, which I'll give you just because I like fanciness, which is the theory-ladenness of perception. Isn't that fancy? Which means that your perception is changed by your theoretical understanding of things. When you have a different model in your mind, when you look at stuff, you look in a different way. You perceive different things by having different model in your mind. It changes you. It changes how you see the world. Yeah? Make sense? So modeling is also changing perception. Are we good? All right. So what happens is that map you have in your mind is almost like a jigsaw puzzle. It has puzzle pieces, and those puzzle pieces are concepts. And when I give you a new concept, it changes the map completely. Yeah? Small kid has no fear of falling off a cliff until they understand that it's dangerous, and then new concept, danger, fear. Everything else is different. The relationships to cliffs is never again like it was before. Yeah? At the moment you give people the gift of understanding concepts better, you give people a changed theory of mind. You give people changed ways of looking at the world itself. Yeah? That, friend, that is hermeneutics. Giving new puzzle pieces to the mind maps of people. Yeah? I just did hermeneutics with the concept of hermeneutics with you. Yeah? That's what I just did it right now. Yeah? That now you have the concept. And it changes you. Make sense? All right. So it's something that you learn by doing it, like we just did. So there is a joy in hermeneutics, right? There is this joy of, now I perceive the world differently. Now I can no longer see the same things and reach the same conclusions because I have a different mind map. Yeah? And that's joyful. That's amazing. And please keep doing hermeneutics. That's a brilliant thing. It's the only thing on the menu. We do all the time. Keep doing it. I love it. Do it with me too. Give me pieces. Please, let's do this. Problem is, and so today's talk subject is hermeneutical violence. Is the way in which we do violence against the means of people of doing hermeneutics. Right? That's today's subject. It's not hermeneutics itself. It's oppression. Yeah? You can see, people that are like in the last 3 talks can see kind of a theme in the talks. But that's a coincidence. No, it isn't. Let's talk about that. History of left-handedness. Have you read this? Ever saw this graph in your life? Yeah. So, up until the 1900s, we did not have a lot of left-handed people. And then we discovered left-handedness, and we exploded the number of left-handed people, and it plateaued, right? Not exactly discovered, but it became acceptable to be left-handed around that time. Before that, we punished left-handed people. Have you heard about that? Punishing left-handed people, we punish in many different ways. We try to force them to write with the right hand. We have, in the medieval era, some people consider the left-handed people were evil. For example, the Latin word for the left hand with sinistra became the word sinister, right? They are not that good. They are different from us, and they are bad, right? And strangely, when we stopped punishing left-handedness, we have way more people telling each other we are actually left-handed. Before that, people kind of avoided the subject altogether. And so the number of left-handed people exploded, right? And it reached a plateau because you just don't have that many left-handed people in society at all. So, you could look at the number and say, oh, everybody's becoming left-handed now. And sure, that's like locally true for some measure of it, but then it plateaus. Yeah? Make sense? Good, good, good. If you imagine yourself as somebody that exists before that, before the violence against left-handedness people, before we had the concept of left-handedness at all. Imagine yourself at that moment, and you can see that if you are left-handed at that moment, before we discovered left-handedness, it sucks, right? I mean, it sucks differently than the moment where it was punished, right? I'm not trying to say one is worse than the other. Try to say, before we discovered the concept itself, you had a suffering that is specific to that era, yeah? Because you are not left-handed, you are not sinister, you are just like incredibly clumsy in the eyes of everybody else, right? You're just bad at the only measure we have of measuring dexterity. Dexterity, which comes... Okay, anyway. Right? So you internalize that you're just very bad at everything that we have to do with hands and feet. Yeah? It's a conclusion that you can easily reach if you are left-handed before the invention of the concept of left-handedness. Then you just behave what is expected from society. You try to be right-handed because there is no concept of right-handedness. It's just everybody uses this hand to do this, and you're not good at that. Yeah? You force yourself, and you suck at it. So you have several different sufferings. You have the suffering of the thing itself, but the suffering of not understanding what's happening. I have a mental model that is very poor towards this. And the suffering of not being able to relate to people about the suffering you have. Yeah? That's hermeneutical suffering. That's what I just described is hermeneutical suffering. Yeah? Make sense? Make sense? Good, 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 good. So, I'll try to have examples that are a little bit less strange than left-handedness, but that one was just easy for me. Mental labor. Ever heard about that? Yeah? Mental labor. It is in feminist literature, mental labor is the act of paying attention to the things that needs to be done. In companies, we call that managing. But like in houses, we call that nothing, usually. Heard about that? Have I read about the concept of mental labor in your life? Yes, no, maybe? Okay, not a lot of people. So let's go into mental labor before I was trying to explain hermeneutics in mental labor, but I have to kind of do a little bit of hermeneutics before going that. So mental labor is if you have to do things in your house. Do you have to do things in your house? Yeah? Okay. If you have to do things in your house, you actually have to think about those things. Like, there is not only the doing of the things, but you kind of have to be aware that things needs to be done, right? And you have that awareness requires skill, requires time, requires like being busy with that. That when you have a little bit of time, instead of going on Twitter or the Wikipedia, you remain your eyes open and you look for what needs to be done and you go try to do it, right? Like you feel a backlog in your mind and you go through that backlog. That's a labor in itself that is outside of the labor of doing the house chores themselves. Both are needed, but it's a specific labor, mental labor. Yeah? Make sense? So, have you ever had the people discuss, like, usually a man, I don't know why, and usually a woman, I don't know why, and like, I don't know why, I know. And the woman's telling the man, Could you do you'd never do anything here. And the man answered this by the phrase, if you ask me, I would have done it. Ever heard that phrase? If you ask me, I would have done it. Yeah? And there are many things that are unconscious to that phrase. Yeah? If you ask me, I would have done it. What the phrase is telling, without consciousness of that, what the phrase is telling is, I have no problems doing the thing itself, but the mental labor I'm not doing. Right? But I do not recognize mental labor as labor. And at the same time, I think it's your job. Right? It's both, right? But it's invisible. Make sense? Right? It also happens to gay couples, right? I say man and woman, but I'm not trying to make this specific, but it's very, very patriarchal. Anyway, that's what is being communicated. It has been communicated without the hermeneutics of this is happening, right? Without the concept of mental labor, you can actually believe sincerely there is nothing happening here. There is just, hey, we have this. If I saw something done, I want you to do what we ask you. If you saw, tell me, no mental labor done. The only labor is the shore itself. That naivety is possible. Yeah? That naivety happens because the person does not have the hermeneutics done in order to see the concept and look at the situation without the concept in their minds. Make sense? Not trying to forgive them for, acquiring the hermeneutics is your job too. It's another mental labor and things like that. I'm not saying, hey, poor guys. No, just pointing the lack of hermeneutics in that situation. Yeah? And if the person had the hermeneutics, they knew about mental labor, knew that this was mental labor, etc., and still say the same thing. Now they say a different thing. The same words means a different thing. Like, the person tells me, hey, why you don't never do anything? If I answer, if you ask me, I will do it. I don't have the concept of mental labor. I am effectively saying there is no mental labor and it's yours, and you do it. But I'm saying this from a place of ignorance. If I have the concept and I say the same thing, what I'm saying is, fuck you. Right? That's basically that. Make sense? Yeah, okay. So, which gets us to a very interesting point. We all suffer from lacking hermeneutics, right? But that suffering does not impact every one of us in the same way. Yeah? In the scenario I just described, both are suffering from a lack of hermeneutics. Maybe the woman that's trying to say doesn't have the hermeneutics of mental labor too. Maybe the man doesn't have it too. Both are suffering it, maybe. That she doesn't have the words to express or the concept to express. No, yeah, it's true that you say that if I ask you to do, but this doesn't sit well with me. I'm missing something here, right? And the guy said, why are you asking me to do this? I'm open to do things. And they're both missing here. Okay, both suffer of not having the concept, but they are not impacted in the same way. It's not because both suffer that they suffer in the same way. Yeah? Privilege matters. Power structures matter. Make sense? About privilege and power structures is the previous talk. You can look at the video later, things like that. But okay? Okay. So, mental labor. What else can I give an example? Beautiful examples we could have. People that are neurodivergent, when they don't know about neurodivergence, they tend to feel very guilt about their behavior. Ever heard about that? Yeah? I hate the book, but like the title is amazing. There is this book, You Mean I'm Not Lazy, Crazy, or Stupid. I mean I'm not lazy, stupid, or crazy, a self-help book for adults with ADHD. Again, very bad book, but amazing title. And it is like representative of how people that are neurodivergent, where they don't have the hermeneutics about what is neurodivergence, what is this, what is ADHD, what is the thing I'm having, then they tend to just interiorize, hey, I'm just a very lazy person, or I'm just a very crazy person, or just a very bad person, or a very stupid person. They tend to rationalize the existence to the better of their ability, having the measures they have with the map of the world they have in their mind. It lacks pieces, and with those pieces, they will have a different reading of the situation. But it happens a lot. Make sense? So, what I'm trying to convince you with those examples is the lack of hermeneutics leads to a lot of suffering, and you reduce the suffering in the world by giving the gift of concepts. Spread the joy of concepts. Yes? So, there's this, I will try to find the image. Measuring animals by climbing tree. There's an image used by a lot of self-help things. Let's use it. For a fair selection, everybody has to take the same exam. Please climb that tree, right? Blindness of our concepts means that we have naiveties about how we measure ability, how we measure success, how we measure what it has to be measured, and we tend to create naively unfair systems of evaluations and systems of behavior to people. Yeah? There's another suffering of hermeneutics. So you suffer from a lack of hermeneutics, you suffer out of your own misunderstanding of our own lived experience, but also after the judgment of other people you have of your own lived experiences. Yeah? So you have a double suffering, triple suffering. The suffering of the thing itself, the suffering of not understanding the thing itself, the suffering of not being understood. Yeah? And maybe the thing itself you cannot change, but already just by removing those two other sufferings, you are reducing overall suffering. Which brings us to Kierkegaard. So, I don't know how to pronounce his name. Søren Kierkegaard? Søren Kierkegaard? No idea. Right. Kierkegaard tells us biggest suffering is the suffering you don't even know you are suffering. It's not because suffering is there, you are feeling it, but you cannot make sense of it or know it or understand it or understand it in a way that is completely out of the line with it. And that increases the suffering itself. Yeah? Making sense of what you're suffering of does not make the suffering go away, but reduces towards just the suffering itself. Yeah? Have you heard the myth of changelings? Changelings? Heard about that? Yeah? Changelings in the medieval times were the explanations we had to say a fae stole a baby and put a copy of that baby that is a fake baby, like a fake baby instead, and that copy of the baby cannot behave like a human. Because it's not, because it's a fake, right? It was the rationalizations we had at the time to explain autism. Make sense? And like a better model of the world reduces the suffering we have about that. So, I got you to understand up till now that this is not about semiology or semantics. It's not about the words. That's a very important point for what's come afterwards, but like, it's not about the words. It's about the concepts. There is a treasury of words. Words change meaning over time. Left hand becomes sinister, right? So the words point towards concepts, but it's the concepts that do hermeneutics, not the words themselves. We need the words, but like, the words are just pointers to the concepts. It's not because I give you a word that I gave you the concept. Just giving you the word autism does not give you a very good model of what autism is. Just giving you the word mental load does not give you a very good model of what mental load is. Words are shortcuts. Symbols are shortcuts. Semantics and semiotics are necessary but insufficient to do hermeneutics. Make sense? Right. There is a music about that. It's called Enjoy the Silence. You can hear it later. Anyway, so have a concept ever changed your life? Like now that we have all these explanations, I asked this question before. Have a concept ever changed your life? Have you ever had a concept that when you encounter it, your life was just different before and after understanding the concept? Yes? Maybe? Yeah. It becomes more universal an experience when we get to this level of understanding of hermeneutics, right? Okay. Now we can start the talk. Let's go for it. Let's talk about violence. So, Miranda Fricker wrote a magnificent book. I love this book. I recommend this book. Miranda Fricker, Epistemic Injustice. What a book. What a book. So, there is like 2 pages in the book about hermeneutical violence. And this talk is about those 2 pages. Just telling you this right now. Everything else is about epistemic injustice, and is an incredibly good concept that deserves its own talk. It's just not today's talk. Yeah? All right? So Miranda Fricker, she will talk about, and we will talk about, hermeneutical difficulty, hermeneutical marginalization, hermeneutical injustice, and then hermeneutical violence. Let's go? So, hermeneutical difficulty is sometimes doing hermeneutics is hard. Yeah? Some concepts are just very complicated concepts. Damns the beans. Okay? Sometimes it is a great suffering to grasp the concept. Sometimes that difficulty is very essential to the concept itself. Sometimes it's very contextual to the society at large right now. Okay? Hermeneutical difficulty is just part of life. By itself, there's nothing good or bad about this. Sucks, but like, sometimes it's just hard to do hermeneutics about a concept. Right? hermeneutical difficulty is not the enemy itself. We can arm ourselves to try to fight it, to try to make it cheaper, to try to make it easier to address concepts. That's just a high-level abstraction of hermeneutics, just doing hermeneutical, meta-hermeneutics to try to give ourselves tools to better do hermeneutics, right? But it's just a cost per se. There's nothing ethically good or bad about hermeneutical difficulty. Yeah? Are we good? Hermeneutical marginalization, on the other hand, then that's that's another problem altogether. So some concepts are more important to some groups than others, right? Left-handedness has more importance to left-handed people than to everybody else, basically. Yeah? And some concepts that are important to a group of people, when a group of people is not very major in the population, those concepts get less exposure to being hermeneuticized. To go through the process of hermeneutics, yes? The LGBTQ people are like 15% of the population or something like that, right? 10, 15, I don't know, I don't have the latest things, but if we consider them to be a minority of people, then the concepts relating to that community will be explored less than the concepts of the straight people. Yeah? It creates an hermeneutical marginalization. Some groups will have the concepts way more explored than some other groups. To a certain level, hermeneutical marginalization is just a basic fact of life. Some people are just a smaller group, that's it, right? It's not by itself a problem or an ethical issue. It's just something to take care and attention to. Yeah? Sometimes a small group, they need a concept, but the concept is universal and usable by everybody else. For example, the BDSM community have a lot of concepts that are necessary to that community, but that in general, humankind at large could use those concepts in very beautiful and useful ways, right? Concepts about things like aftercare, of the usage of a scene, are concepts specific to the BDSM community, but that we can usually at large use even if we are not part of that community. And that transference there means just that they need that concept more than us, but everybody needs the concept. Make sense? But it still creates marginalization. Like the people that need the concept more have less space in society to do hermeneutics with that, and have less people to do that with, and that's just a basic part of representation, basically. Yeah? Okay? Up until there is no problem per se, it's just something to pay mind to. Yeah? Then we have hermeneutical injustice, and now the problems begin. Yeah? Like, billionaires could suffer from hermeneutical marginalization, right? They are a very small group of people, so there's no reason why the concepts are more explored than the concepts of non-billionaires, right? There will be nothing specifically unjust about the concepts of billionaires being less explored. There's just a small number of people. Yeah? It so happens that in society, structures of power happens, see previous talk, and Bourdieu talk, watch that. And, we kind of bias the marginalization in very specific ways, right? The concepts of people that are represented acted by the power are concepts that are way more seen than the concepts of people that are under the rule of oppression. So concepts important to billionaires, although they should be marginalized because it's just a small group, become very, very, very explored. And the concepts of, I don't know, black women from the last century are concepts that are strangely less worked on. Yeah? There's a book about that, beautiful book. I highly recommend. Patricia Hill Collins, Black Feminist Thought. So, on hermeneutical injustice, right? Hill Collins, what she does is she says, as a black woman, within the feminist groups, I'm suffering racism, and within the anti-racist groups, I'm suffering sexism. And I kind of need to find my group of black women to have discussions of an intersection of those two things. And she says, I wanted to, as an academic, because she is an academic, she says, I want to see what other black women have said about that in the past. And then she found that it was a very difficult thing to do because it so happens that black women have talked about that a lot in the past, but not in a way that is acceptable to the academy to be cited. Right? There's no representation there of the hermeneutics of black women is hermeneutical injustice. See? So not all hermeneutical marginalization is notable, but hermeneutical injustice is a marginalization that is sustained artificially. Right? And then now we have problems with it. Make sense? Every one of those steps is a new hermeneutics about something, right? You realize that that's why I'm doing the whole presentation, yeah? Okay, so hermeneutical injustice is this sustained and artificially maintained marginalization of hermeneutical difficulty, yeah? What a phrase, what a phrase. Let me write this down. So hermeneutical injustice, a phrase that would have no sense some seconds ago, right? So hermeneutical injustice is this sustained, artificial, hermeneutical marginalization of hermeneutical difficulty. Right? Like, yeah. So, yeah, fuck it. Anyway, which brings us to hermeneutical violence, yeah? So, hermeneutical violence, once I said all that, the title of the talk itself is hermeneutical violence, right? Hermeneutical violence is the ways we use to do hermeneutical injustice, right? Hermeneutical injustice is the result of the hermeneutical violence. Is what are we doing in order to make hermeneutics more difficult to people? Yeah? How are we destroying the sense-making skills? Yeah? Let's do this. I mean, let's take a look into it. Of destroying sense-making. Yeah? So, let's go for like 6 different ways. Go. One way of doing this is taboo. We make it so talking about the thing is bad. Yeah? Like we're just like plainly talking about this is bad. So there is a nuance here, right? If I say, for example, hey, we don't talk about feminism at work. Yeah? I'm not actually destroying the concept of feminism when I do that, right? I'm actually accepting that it exists as a concept. Like when I say we do not talk about feminism at work, and forbidding feminism as a subject, but the subject of feminist does not disappear from the hermeneutics of people. Even some people could discover feminism through that phrase, right? Right? But there are thousands of other subjects that will not be discussed when I say that. And those other subjects, I'm doing hermeneutical violence at them. Right? The taboo is like, I'm choosing a concept to hide all others, and that concept, okay, I'm not destroying that, but I'm destroying all those. Make sense? That's the taboo. Taboo is, for example, saying cartoon characters gay kissing. So it's saying that like a picture like this is sexualized, right? And then it should not be taken in consideration. That's taboo. By creating that taboo, I'm addressing that picture, but then I'm hiding everything that could be hidden behind it. Yeah? It is a ditch effort, right? It is very used, but like it's a common violence in this cultural war. But it has its own limitations, yeah? Let's talk about negation. Negation is an easy one. No, you're wrong. I mean, it's also a last-ditch effort as a hermeneutical violence goes, right? I'm just telling you that I'm attacking the word itself. I'm telling you this does not mean that. I'm trying to get you away from the concept while pushing the word elsewhere. Yeah, like I said before, there is a treasury of words. Yeah? So if I can fight the words, if I can fight them, if I say you're wrong about that, or if I can find your lived experience, if I can say, no, what you're saying, the concept you are trying to be here, if I forget the words and go for the concept that you're trying to be here, that concept doesn't happen. I can make yourself doubt yourself, and if I can make yourself doubt yourself, I can make the concept fall out of your grasp little by little. I invalidate your lived experience. Ever heard about that? Ever saw somebody do that to you, maybe? Yeah? A lot of parents do that to kids. Third violence. Let's talk about that one. I have my notes, right? Keep forgetting. Oh yeah, that's a difficult one. Normativity. Oh, sorry. So normativity as a hermeneutical violence. So normativity is like an invisible violence. You do not name a concept, so you cannot name the opposites of the concept. It just is, right? You not say there are trans people and cis people. You say like, no, transness doesn't exist, and cis people is a slur, and this is just a normal people and abnormal people. By creating that kind of the norm as an invisible thing, the norm goes unstated. And when the norm goes unstated, you cannot no longer do hermeneutics on the things that are in the norm itself. Like, there is this beautiful podcast series called Seeing White. It's 14 episodes, just about seeing white, because white people are not defined. We define black people, we define Indians, we define other people that are not white. We define as opposed to white people, which are the norm and go undefined. It's not only a simple category, it's the norm that pushes towards the norm creates that hermeneutical violence of not being able to see white people as a concept itself, our concepts of white people themselves. By suiciding our own concepts, we make more hard for black people to have their concepts. Kind of a seppuku. Anyway, sorry. It isn't at all like a seppuku. So, normativity is a big one. Like I used the picture before of the two cartoons kissing, right? We defined two cartoons kissing as sexual. We do not define two straight cartoons kissing as sexual. We just do not define it at all. It's a normal thing, just two people kissing. Yeah? And then we destroy the ways of sense-making. Let's go for, oh, my favorite. Recuperation. Recuperation just attacks the semantics. Pure attacking the semantics. I take the word and I make it mean something else. Right? For example, have you heard of the word woke? Right? It meant something to a community, and we make it mean something completely different entirely, and now the word is fucked, and people that use that word to do some hermeneutics can no longer use that word to do hermeneutics with that word. They just mean something entirely different now. Strangely. Have you heard the word self-care? Now, self-care, if you Google it, let's Google self-care. If you Google self-care, you have like sponge baths and things like that, right? Like images of baths and no, I haven't. Of course, I'm not having those. I mean, why would I? Religions and things like that, and like taking time for yourself and meditations and massages and things like that. And self-care started in the revolutionary communist movement about the necessity of not burning out when you are trying to change the system, right? It's saying, okay, learn to rest as a necessary skill. And it's no longer something you attribute to self-care, right? Have you heard about solidarity? That word, that beautiful, beautiful word, solidarity. Solidarity, people interpret it today as a concept very similar to charity, right? I'm just giving money to people to help them out. Whereas solidarity was created as a word from the Latin solidus, to create common body, to create a word to how do you create a structure where we are together, trying together to fight the system. Very different concepts. Strangely, all of those changes benefit the same groups. I don't know why. I know why. So recuperation is a very beautiful thing. Last bit of recuperation. Economy. The word economy comes from the Greek oikos nomos, right? It comes from the norms of the house, the rules of the house. What do we need to do to make the house work? And strangely, that's not how people see economy today at all. We think about growth, for example, which could be a useful thing or not if you want the house to work, right? Like every one of those things was recuperated. The words were used and taken by power to mean something else, so that you do not access the hermeneutics behind them. And you need to find other words that are recuperated again, and this cycle goes on. Two last ones, because I don't have a lot of time. Algophobia. I'll talk about that later in the next talk, but like algophobia is the fear of pain. Nothing to do with algorithms. Completely coincidence. Really, no, the two different etymologies. No, nothing to, I'll explain the next talk. Algophobia is the fear of pain. And people sometimes do a self-inflicted hermeneutical violence because they are afraid the suffering they will have when they access the concept. It happens a lot. They should read Kierkegaard, right? And the last one that I will give to you is productivism. If I make you very busy producing, you will not have a lot of time to think about concepts. Yeah? So 6 different violences we do to ourselves and others in order to destroy our ways of making hermeneutics. One single advice I give to you, it is dangerous to go alone. Hermeneutics is a social activity by definition. So create a group of like-minded people, start hermeneuticizing, start doing hermeneutics together. Take time for that. Thank you.